Hello, hello, hello. Hello, friends. I'm translating the Voynich manuscript, and I'm going to be translating some of it on this live today. I'm going to add a wallpaper. How do I add a wallpaper? I don't know. Hello, friends. I'm adding a little sticker here. Hello, friends. Hi. Do you see the sticker? Does the sticker show? I hope so. Hi, Jazzy. What's up? Thank you for joining the live. Yeah, you can see the sticker. Cool. I always say 0 guests, so I never know how many people are actually joining. I think some people have their settings off, so sometimes I can't tell the actual amount of people who are here, so that's kind of intimidating. But I am working on the cartography map. I just wrapped a call with Kyra, which was fantastic. Some of that will be on YouTube. We spent a lot of time just researching simultaneously, so it's just a lot of us just like completely silent, completely research mode. When it's one, it means 2 people. Okay, that makes sense. Yeah. Hi, welcome. I was just saying that I just wrapped a call with Kyra. She's doing some of the geographical research. And so I'm back to looking at the map. And we spent like more than half of the call just doing research. So it's a lot of us just like silently like recording. So I'm not going to post the whole, I think we were meeting for like 2 hours. So I'm not going to post the whole 2 hours, I don't think, because it's a lot of us just staring. But we corrected a spot on the map. A spot in France that was originally had translated to Saint Brieuc, but it wasn't an exact phonetic translation. And we are looking around that area, and we found basically the word itself has a suffix or a second word, which is the word for cape. And I always thought that was like kind of weird and interesting, the word cap. So I was like, oh, what if it's completely separate from the actual name of the location? And then, of course, like right near Saint Brieuc, we found La Hague Cap, basically. So the word cap being there makes a lot more sense than Saint Brieuc. So, which also clears up a few other locations where I thought that AT may be representing Saint. So we also clarified Dynastia. There are a couple of interesting things came up. So because some of these places could be other places, for example, Tripoli, there's a Tripoli in Greece. There's also a Tripoli in Lebanon. So I got to thinking, what if this is representing more than one Tripoli, or what if it's incorrect entirely? So I started to look for more clues. I translated the entire dial in the bottom left corner, which appears to be directions on how to read the map, which is really cool. That's one of the reasons why I really wanted to get it situated. And reading around the dial, I have the fork trident, the neck of the fork trident at retracing south, do your enclosure fresh young from off of, and then I have the word, a word that means both landed estate and the word for excision. So I think I mentioned in a previous video that this looks like the cross sections of a hagfish. So the idea that this word, it's the word orba or forba, it's right in the center of that longest word there in the dial. And it means both landed estate in terms of land and also excision, cut. And the longer version of the word is the word for operation. Operation Little Row, which is just so cool. I'm translating this working with my established lexicon through Modern Irish. So I started to establish the lexicon over a year ago. When I initially started, my lexicon, it needed like a couple of different iterations in terms of phonetics and also the actual script. So for example, when I first started, I thought the M was an R, and it really screwed me up, but I was still getting enough words back that I knew that I was on the right track. And so I narrowed down syntactically, like character by character, what I was looking at phonetically based off of what we see in Modern Irish and also Medieval Irish in terms of repeated suffixes, characters, character combos like TH, FH, BH, MH, all of these repeated combos, what comes up most frequently. That's how I kind of narrowed down what each character was. And I also used the Kiki and Boba theory, which is like a theory that like humans associate like kind of like harsher sounds with pointier visual and softer sounds like mama, baba with curvier letters. So I used a bit of that like theory and that methodology when I was first establishing the lexicon. I was also familiar with Italic and Celtic scripts. So I was looking at old Celtic scripts like the Book of Kells. And right now I actually have a huge book that has all of the alphabets, these different historical alphabets that are Celtic, Irish, Gaelic. And yeah, it's been pretty cool. I'm also starting this live because someone just said that someone else is translating it in Irish, and I don't think they are. I think the person might have been confusing me with someone else, or they were confusing me with me because I have my hair different in a lot of my videos, and I make a lot of videos about this, so I'm guessing that probably happened. There's someone that I just, when the person told me that someone else had posted about this being linked to Gaelic or linked to Irish, I looked into it, and someone else has been posting that they've been translating it. And they, of course, are like not giving any linguistic like approach at all. So it seems a little bit not real. And they're selling a book on Amazon, which is like classic, you know. I'm not selling anything. I'm just working on this very honestly. But yeah, I saw that and I was like, oh, I wonder if that's who they were talking about. But yeah, so that dial on the left corner of the cartography map is super interesting. The word adal comes up. This comes up in several other sections as well. It's the word for like fork or trident. When it's describing like the growth of plants into other sections where it has like 3 stems, this word is used as well. It's adal. So I have neck layer fork trident at retracing south, which some of the places here are not entirely situated, like the St. Bruach, for example. That ended up being the cap of Alahag, which is really cool because we also came up with a castle there that has these staggered stone blocks with little tiny windows, and that's exactly what's pictured. So in the top right corner of the map, you can see these, and the area is known for its big wide waves, and you can see the waves depicted. So on the map, on the coastlines, there's like these very deliberate strokes of like drawing strokes that are made to depict different types of waves. So throughout the text, there are different types of waves described. Little wave, small wave, big wave, ebb, all sorts of different types of waves are described. And in Irish, when it comes to descriptors, there are so many different words for every little thing. Like if you look up in Irish how many different types of rain have their own word, it's just amazing. Same with the word green, because there's so much green in Ireland. There's like, I think it's something around 65 different words for green. It's incredible. So there's a lot of different words for different types of waves. There's also a lot of different words for different types of rivers. So Ava is sort of like the root for river, and there are so many different variations of that in the text. So there's like little ford, little river, river rain. Many different types of river are described, and many different types of waves. And the actual visual waves are different. Right in that corner at the top right of the cartography map, there are these like kind of like beautiful strokes that are like this, like these large big waves. And that area specifically in France, La Hague, the Cap of La Hague, it's known for these very specific waves that are like, it's right in the English Channel, that are really big. Thoughts on the grammar and the manuscript. Okay, so I'm currently working with a native Irish speaker. Kyra's texting me right now. Oh my God, we had such a great meeting earlier. I can't wait to share it with you. We met for like 2 or 3 hours. It was so wonderful. I could honestly spend like days with Kyra. I would never like get bored. We have so much to talk about. But we did a bunch of research, and a large part of the video is really boring. It's just us like staring at our screens. So I definitely won't post all of it, but I'll post most of it. Thoughts on grammar in the manuscript. I am currently running demonstrations of repeatability, which are already successful, which is literally insane to think about. I'm so excited. So demos of repeatability are already successful to some degree, which is amazing. I'm working with someone from Ireland right now, and he's just incredibly smart. And he actually started translating it before we met, which is really, really awesome. So we had like a starting point. But we were talking a bit about grammar, and I told him that there seems to be some Latin or Italian influence because of verb, subject, object order in some sections. And also there is a suffix that doesn't exactly happen in Ireland in this particular order. So the idea of some... Marty, hey, Marty. Sorry, my cat's like gonna knock something over. Stop. So the suffix from, like meaning some, like, Marty, don't knock that over. Sorry. The suffix from, which is an a fada, or at least what I've determined in the text, a fada following a noun is from that noun. So, for example, let's say I had ava o, it would be from river. So ava is river, and the suffix is from, it would be from river. So this o fada is acting as a suffix that means from. That is not standard Irish. So I'm working with him to get a better idea of like what sort of phonetic influence that would be from. I'm thinking it's an Italian influence just because of the Cisalpine Celtic link. So I'm guessing that it's a Cisalpine Celtic link there in terms of... we see that throughout the text, that suffix for o, which I read as from, and that is just based off of like the logic of the sentence. It can also be seen on labels throughout the text. For example, like cochag. Cochag is like a cubby hole, like a container for animals to feed in, and she's literally, this little tiny lady on 77V is inside of a little cochag. And it says the word cochag, but it has a suffix, o fada. And it's written like an A with an X. That's o fada, AX. O Fada, which is from Cochog, from the Cochog, which isn't standard Irish, but logically and logistically throughout the text, those things happen grammatically. But yeah, I have noticed that more than one people are starting to say, oh, I've translated it. Oh, blah, 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 blah. I have something for sale on Amazon. Do not give these people money. I feel like some people have a certain personality where they just want to see something like this and see it as like a money-making opportunity, and they have like levels of narcissism or something. Because it's the same type of people that I've been seeing that are like, oh, I've translated it. And I'm like, name any page that you've translated. I just don't know why that is, that like something so beautiful and special can be made into like a money-making MLM scheme, and like people have their Amazon storefronts and all this stuff, and I just don't understand. Are you getting a picture of the contents and purpose? Yes. Some of the actual purpose is it's kind of like a long video to watch, but when Kyra and I met the last time, I posted that to my YouTube of us talking about like, purpose. We have a pretty definitive link to Franciscan friaries. I am still on the fence in terms of gender-wise, what's going on here, because there are certain sections where certain things could be applied to either gender, to either sex, if that makes sense, like medically. A lot of it is really medical and not as interesting as people want to think it is, but like it's very instructional. A lot of it is extremely instructional, and that's my reading. Irish as a language has religion sort of caked into it, so it is easy to take something religious from the text, and it's not entirely illogical to do so, but the actual foundation of the text is not based in religion. At least that's my reading and my interpretation. My understanding is that it is largely instructional. It is largely medical, agricultural, surrounding health, and there are ideas and fables in more of the astrology section, and they're also reflective of the areas that were traveled to along the coast, which is part of the cartography map. There's one of the pages that I haven't gone into full detail yet, but I talk a bit about on my Substack, are the two pages that bring up Betel and Beryl, which are, and they're depicted in the images themselves. So there's a reference to India there. And it seems super far, but it seems like this person was a coastal traveler to some degree, getting a lot of stories from different people that have different accents. So this person is spelling some of the places phonetically as they would hear it as an Italian or Irish speaker, and they're writing it phonetically in medieval Irish or medieval Cisalpine Celtic. But they're hearing people mention, oh, I'm going to, Portus Cordal, for example. That's one that's mentioned. Portus Cordal is in Turkey. So it's phonetically spelled Cordal, but it's not spelled like it would be spelled in Turkey, if that makes sense. So I recently connected with someone really fantastic who lives in Ireland. Her family is from Ireland, but she grew up in South Africa, and she just has like a wealth of knowledge of the area. She lives actually close to two direct locations that we have translated in Ireland, and she offered to take her camera, because she's a photographer, and go and take photos in some of the locations. But she also said, I reached out to several different Irish universities, and didn't hear back for like a long time. And she said it was likely because I had mentioned the manuscript and it just has such a bad reputation. There are so many cuckoo for Cocoa Puff people trying to translate this thing that like when you mention it in an email, people are like, oh my God, this person is cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs. I'm not responding, you know? So that was, I think, my main issue for not getting a response from a lot of Irish universities to begin with. But luckily she knows people directly, which she's hopefully connecting me to. There's a lack of manuscripts online, which is super frustrating. Like in terms of actually seeing medieval Irish the way it was written, it's very difficult to access a lot of these manuscripts. A lot of them require like university emails, etc. But I was luckily able to find several versions of Tanbo, which is what I used initially. So when I first started translating, I wanted to make sure that phonetically syntactically, the letters match up. So like C and G, there's an overlap there, for example, with like Agus and Achus. So those are two spellings, but they're basically the same. There are two different spellings in between medieval and modern Irish, but they sound the same. So just mapping out those similarities in terms of like actual letters, making sure that I'm consistent throughout the text. There are two main different scribes. Some people think that there are over 4. I do not think that there are over 4 scribes in this. And there are mainly 2. Those 2 scribes have different accents and make slightly different choices in terms of the phonetics with the E and O vowels. Or sorry, the E and I vowels. So I think, based off of my interpretation, is that they have 2 different phonetic accents. Which would align with, I mean, if you go to Ireland right now and you talk to someone who speaks modern Irish in the north and you talk to someone who is all the way in the Connacht territory, like in the west, they're going to sound totally different. They might not even understand each other. That's how different the dialects are in Irish. Like even now, even after all this time, the actual dialects are so significantly different. And talking to the person that's running the demo of repeatability, like he was saying, like, yeah, the dialects are so extraordinarily different. And I see that in the text between the scribes, between what they call language A and language B. And yeah, we're really trying to narrow down the where and the who. We're almost entirely certain this person was part of the Franciscan friaries. There was a lot of really political, interesting things happening during this time. We've looked into different possibilities, like and adjacent people that the person could have been inspired by, like Bonaventura. A lot of the themes are similar to a couple of writers and thinkers 100 years back. So we were looking at their contemporaries as well. Contemporaries of Roger Bacon, for example, there are similar ideas. For example, I did not look into Roger Bacon at all before I started translating this, and I translated the entire alkali section, and apparently Roger Bacon has a whole thing about alkali. And I was like, oh my God, what is happening? But I get the sense when I've done the minimal research, the very minimal research that I've done on Roger Bacon, is he has taken or extracted ideas from other cultures before. And to me, it seems like the way that this reads is that it's much older braiding that's based in Ireland, older ideas that Roger Bacon probably extracted from, if that makes sense, in like sort of a colonial way. I don't get the best vibe from Roger Bacon's work, but we've looked at other possibilities as well. The word Aachen, the Franciscan bath, So that also corresponds to the translated word that I had for oakum and occam. So there's like sort of an overlap there. There's also possibly a nod to Occam, as in the guy who made Occam's razor, Occam. And there's also another Occam who's based in the Franco-Flemish schools for music. And there is a musical element to this. Pipes are mentioned, reeds are mentioned a lot, and the phonetics involved. There's sort of a polyphonic thing that happens where you could be reading one sentence, and I have a list of homonyms, and you could read the sentence in a different way with those homonyms, and it would still make sense. It would just have a different feel to it. So there's a musical element there based off of inflection. In fact, the word inflection comes up in a handful of different spots, but inflection is important and accent is important. Accent is also mentioned in the section where the two references to India are made. So there's a playful element there too, where it's not, it literally translates to X, Y, and Z, but you can kind of infer other things from it. It's the words are weighted. I call them like weighted words. And to just like give you an example, we have that in English. We have that in all languages. If you break down a word, it's like, oh, no wonder that word has a connotation of X, Y, and Z. It's because it's linked to this Latin word for X, Y, and Z. But to give you an example in Irish, so like do, to, which is like D-O, sometimes with a fada. If it has a fada, it's dole, which is loop. And that also translates from to. So loop is like from to. And then the actual D looks like an 8, which is like a loop. And then that D is also the starter for source or God. So it's like someone could read that religiously, but like in a medical way, there's a lot of looping that happens. And also in terms of basket making. So there's weaving that happens as well, instructions in regards to like weaving. And there's loop is mentioned a lot. But if you were to look at this text and sort of like gauge something similarly in terms of the syntax, right? You could easily like read something like do or dole as more God-leaning, but really it's just descriptively talking about making loops. If that makes sense. But yeah, dia, do. Does anyone have any questions? I can show you some images soon. One of the more recent articles that I did on Substack is about Beryl and Beetle, which is like a very specific goat in India. And it's just so fascinating. The person probably heard goat referred to in that way and wrote it down phonetically. And I just think that's so fascinating. And it also, so the other way that I can show you like how the words are weighted, especially when they're sort of like these blended, what looks like blended language. The two goat pages, there's one goat where the goat is right next to a green plant, and it's just a green plant. There's no blue, it's just the goat and the green plant. And the word betel means green plant, but it also means goat in India. So it's like that one little word is weighted and describing two things in the image simultaneously. And then on the other page, there's blue, like a pale blue and a pale green. And then another goat in the middle, and that one does not have the T. It has a beryl, Beryl, and that is emerald and a pale aquamarine stone. And you see those two colors right there, which also has links to India, which is just super fascinating. And it reads to me not necessarily entirely Franciscan religious, but also Franciscan in terms of just sharing knowledge and talking with merchants and having like a coastal lingo to share information and share ideas. I don't think 100% that people were necessarily like excluded from certain readings, but finding out from YouTube, from the woman who, I forget her name, Kristen Hartley, she was saying that, or Catherine Hartley, she was saying that back in those times, charms, if someone couldn't read some of the words in a charm, they would take that as a curse and be afraid of it and not want to look into it. So there's an element there that does seem like the charm at the end was a protective measure. I know. I honestly, that's the one part of like my process where it was definitely like my own, like, that was definitely just like my sapphic daydream that it was Christine de Pizan. People are always like, oh, like, you know, when you work on something like this, you're imprinting your own knowledge and your own background onto it. And I was like, no, I'm like doing this completely logically, blah, blah, blah. But I think I like deep down secretly really wanted it to be Christine de Pizan. I mean, she's not off the table. She's still like, you know, I just don't think she was as mobile as it seems that this person was. This person seems like they were making moves along the coast. I know, I'm obsessed with Christine de Pizan. She was such a badass. So I'm translating using modern Irish dictionaries that are linked to older dictionaries. So I'm approaching it through a modern Irish lens. But if you look at something like Tanbo, for example, it was written in the, I mean, there's written before the 1400s. It was written, there are so many different versions of it, but it's medieval, it's Old Irish, it's medieval Irish, and a lot of the words are very similar. So Irish went through a period of stagnation in terms of language development and language evolution, so it puts it kind of at a weird place linguistically. When a language is like paused and prevented from evolving, it evolves in strange, interesting ways, like within the country itself, but also it's not developing from the same etymologies as everyone else. However, they have linking points that are much older. So when people are viewing this text from an outside perspective, it begins to be like a kaleidoscope or like kind of psychedelic, because they're reading these words that have their own etymology lines that trailed off of something much more like Proto-Indo-European, which is linked to Old Celtic and Old Celtic languages. So I'm using modern Irish, but it's connecting to the Old Irish original words, if that makes sense. So to also give you an example, they just this year came up with a dictionary that is purely Irish and not connected to English, not written with an English lens. Like just this year. Even though it was a fully established language with all of its own etymology, because of colonization, there was never a dictionary that was just purely Irish because of colonization. So they're just now releasing purely, 100% purely Irish dictionaries that have the etymology dating back to older Irish versions, but not linking to anything English. So the Irish language dictionaries we have right now is what I'm limited to. So Tenglan, when I type in a word that I'm translating in Irish, it will give me the English definition. It's not going to give me, it has Irish definitions, but the main dictionary itself has an English definition, if that makes sense. Do you know she came to the court like the same year Charles VI was born? I have to know if they grew up at all together. I don't know. I do not know. That's a good question, though. Oh, wait, yeah, because he had a mental breakdown, didn't he? Do you know he came to the court the same year as... Did you know she came to That's a good question. He was 22, yeah. There was so much political drama happening during that time. Everywhere, not just in France, like everywhere. But one of the reasons why I was really stuck on believing that it was Christina Pizan is that she wrote for the general public. Like, she wasn't just writing for like royalty. She like really wanted to have her work completely accessible to the general public. Like, and the language and the writing was totally different. Like, people in the general public like couldn't like really like gather significant meaning from like the types of script and writing she was doing for the royal court. But I have a theory that is completely there's no proof for it, but I have a theory that she was writing smut for royalty. Because she was hired by everyone and she needed to make money after her husband died. Like, he had all of these debts that she had to take care of. And so she was very much indebted to like royalty. And she was a really progressive writer. It just makes sense that she was probably writing smut. Yeah, she started in romance. She was such a romantic thinker, yeah. And I will also say, there are some sections that are naughty in the Voynich. But I have to do some more research, and I have to have, like, a better idea of these two specific pages that are, like, the bulkier text pages, before I can, like, say it definitively. But there's some naughty bits. So there are references to Irish folklore, I think, with the women, and they're small. So a lot of the instructions are relating to both small and large processes. I think I talk about that in my Substack a little bit, is like how it will be describing something on the small scale. Simultaneously, homonym-wise, it'll be describing something on a larger scale, because that's how the Irish language works. Like words that are connected. So you can read them in different ways depending on like inflection. So it's like some things are describing small scale things and some things are describing larger scale things, but it makes the women, the maidens, or so they're called, the maidens, like kind of miniature in a lot of the text. Like how they're depicted is kind of like miniature. I don't think that pregnancy is like the focal point necessarily. How are you guys doing? What pregnant? We're talking about the little maidens in the Voynich manuscript. I have read them to mean like representational, and related to some ideas that are in Irish mythology that have come up. And also related to water. Yeah, especially with Tuatha Danann, which was influenced by like Christian ideas, but there's a bunch of mythology that predates that as well. This idea of the Fomorians were not, they're not like real people necessarily, it's just like folklore mythology, but they were looked down on in a bunch of ways, but they were needed in order to like civilize Ireland because they had all of the knowledge in regards to agriculture. And so the Fomorians were needed, even though they were like seen as like heathens, they were needed to civilize Ireland. But that's like an ancient mythology kind of story. There's also the Filbogs, which are actually like more likely to have actually existed, but a lot of like what we read that's like readily available is like through an English and Christian kind of lens, even though historically that's not what happened. It's just like historically what was documented and how things were documented. I'm reading this great book, The Last of the Celts, which is really interesting. But yeah, just how much historical power Britain had over the whole area. Like, there's so much that is left out, but luckily there are awesome writers that have like historical and like verbal passed down knowledge, so it's not like entirely gone and wiped out. But for example, if you look up Ireland 1400s, the Wikipedia is like 2 lines. It's like there was no country there. But there was so much going on. There was so much exchange and cultural exchange. That's one of the reasons why I've been hesitant to release as much as I want to with the translation. I spoke to someone who told me that knowledge like this was usually only held and kept by women. Like, even if like men had documented it, women would keep knowledge like this and keep it like between women only and like verbal only. She said that like her grandparents and her grandparents, like all of the information was passed down like matriarchally through women and sisters, and was not like publicized. So like that's why I've been a little bit cautious to like fully release some of this, because I'm like, and I also have we have a lot of work to do in terms of like figuring out the who exactly, but we've got locations and we've got possibilities. There was back in these times, they would in monasteries, there was like programs. One of the areas that it is likely mentioned directly is an area where there were like underserved youth in these monasteries, and the monastery programs were usually like 3 to 5 years, I think, but you could do this double extended program where people in Ireland in the monasteries, they were learning Greek, they were learning like Plato, they were learning all of these philosophical ideas, and they would go to these monasteries for a 10-year program, which would require some sort of end project. And to me, this reads sort of like a very like knowledgeable end 10-year program at a monastery that is serving a purpose. This whole area at the end of the text talks about the importance of like passing along seeds of knowledge, and it references Greek philosophers and Greek plants, and it's just this idea of like passing along knowledge, like this manuscript serving a specific purpose. There's a couple of bathhouses that Kyra brought up in our last talk as well, where a lot of the plants are specifically medicinal for skin issues, like cuts and abrasions. And during this time, there was a bunch of sort of like not so great outbreaks going on. And we were also talking about like the queer element of like these Franciscan churches were really freaking cool. Like they seemed like they could have been like a haven or a safe place for people that were queer possibly as well. But that being said, like there are these bathhouses that are mentioned, like Aachen is like specifically mentioned, and the Irish person who's running a demo also picked up on Aachen, which is really wild. But there's a possibility that some of this was like medicinal specifically for skin issues, rheumatoid issues. That's why they're going to the bath, to like to like anti-inflammatory reasons, but also possibly like STDs if those were going on. There was a scabies outbreak. That's one of the reasons why I was like, are they talking about fleshworms? But yeah, Kyra did some research in regards to there was like different not so great outbreaks happening in Europe during that time, making a medical book with medicine and seeds really valuable. So that's like sort of like the why that we're heading towards, as like to share knowledge and medicine for those in Franciscan communes, churches, parishes, and bathhouses. Oh, sorry, I wasn't paying attention. Oops. Yeah, colonization. What a bummer. Yeah, the Black Plague was around the same time. But one thing that has come up in terms of Yale research is that the order of the folios, I guess Lisa Fagan-Davis and another researcher are going to release something soon about the order of the folios. That hasn't played a huge role in what I'm working on. But the idea that the folios were not bound together to begin with, meaning they were like loose leaf, makes a ton of sense to me if this person was traveling, if they were doing this travel, and these were like parts of an assignment for like monastery work. There are areas where it seems that this person was like live and like actually documenting something, like, I mean, in terms of like the physicality of the folios where there's like water, etc. I will also say that I have had this ongoing theory that it might be in one of the Substacks that I wrote, that if you look at the cartography map, it's folded in this kind of interesting way that reminds me of an exquisite corpse. And if you've ever done an exquisite corpse in like art school, it's where you fold a paper 3 ways. You draw the head, you hide the head, you give it to someone else. They draw the midsection, they hide the midsection, they give it to someone else, they draw the feet, And then when you pull it out, it's a monster, and no one knew what the other parts of the creature looked like. This idea was supposedly started by the Situationists, the Surrealists in France in the 20th century. So it's not like they would have known that, but I personally think that idea has existed since the beginning of time. That's just like a fun art thing to do. But one of my theories is that some of this folded map could have been done in that kind of way. Because the way that it does look like possibly each scribe got a section, and they folded it, like they distributed it. Because the writing is slightly different in the different sections, and the way that the coastline lines up is like slightly different. But that's just a fun theory. I don't think that it's that easy to prove that, so I haven't focused that much time on it. Really interesting things came up with this one section where I'm under the impression sort of the mapping of the different readings is involved, and it started off as like, ooh, I'm gonna look into this, and then it ended up being like so much more complicated. But I'm pretty much done with that translation, and I think I might just post it a little early to Substack. But it's, let me see what page it is. It's one of the astrological pages. And it reads as sort of like a compass, or I'm reading it as some sort of like educational compass, and it describes different types of learners, which is so cool. Or at least I think it's describing different types of learners. So I'll post that to Substack soon. Let me know if you have any questions. I know, right? Exquisite Corpse. I love Exquisite Corpse. And the coolest thing about me thinking that it's Exquisite Corpse is that I also think that it's cross sections of hagfish. So it's literally an exquisite corpse. This one page is a cartography map, but also a dissection map. In the bottom left corner, which is the way I started this video off at, there's a word that translates to both landed estate, like sectioned off estate, as well as operation excision. Like the word translates as both, has both meanings as like a cartography map and a dissection. Which is so cool. Makes me so excited. The word is abraid and orba. Abraid and orba. Yay! I'm so stoked to learn more from the person that's participating in demo right now. We exchanged emails. I gave him like a section to translate, but he had already translated some of it because he was really curious. We ended up talking on a call for over 2 hours, which is fully recorded. He's living in Spain right now. I'm not able to reach Irish FYPs right now, by the way. There's something with Irish regulations where I'm not able to reach Irish FYPs. I'm not able to direct message anyone from Ireland, which is very bizarre. So if they have a VPN, that's how I was able to contact the person that's actually living there. And then the person that's helping me with demos, he and I have a bunch in common, so I ended up on his FYP, but he's in Spain right now. So I'm able to reach other countries, just not Ireland, and I think it has to do with Ireland's regulations right now with America. Watching you talk is like when someone says all your dog's favorite word. That's so sweet. I know, Ireland has specifically really intense regulations in terms of internet and identity and all of that. So it's probably something to do with America and the way it is right now. The Ireland's just like, no, don't interact with those people. But it's been so fascinating working with him because he had already translated a little section of it because he was really curious, and he had been watching my content. And we ended up talking for so long. It was such a great conversation. He's also like what do you call it? Where you talk really fast. So we were both like motor mouth. He was also a motor mouth, so we were motor mouthing like the entire time. It was so great. And he lives in Spain because he couldn't deal with Ireland being so Americanized, which is kind of unfortunate that Ireland is becoming Americanized. And he has a wife that is Egyptian, which is so cool. And I was like, oh my gosh. I haven't come across any direct Egyptian references, but I wouldn't be surprised if they come up, especially after the Portus Cordal was possibly mentioned in Turkey. So it's like going around deeper into the Black Sea Mediterranean area. What was I going to say? Oh yeah. The really cool thing is the section that he translated, this is before or even like the actual demo happened, the section that he translated, he followed the same logic that I do, like, and most of the words were the same except for like 2 words where he leaned slightly religious with them. And I'm like, that's exactly what I think is happening with the text, which is super, super cool. So like what he had was like a prayer, and a reference to like the Holy Trinity or God. And for me, I had it translated as like the wrapping of a splinter. So random. The Ottoman Empire. Well, that's the one thing why I was a little bit confused, because Tripoli is in Greece, but it's also in Lebanon. So I was like, maybe it's referring to the Tripoli in Lebanon. And visually, like, the border does look a little bit more like Tripoli in Lebanon. It doesn't make sense for it to be Tripoli in Greece. I'm still not sure if that's the actual place that's being listed, because it's not an exact, it's just a phonetic translation. It's not an exact syntactical. I know. Oh my gosh, it makes me think so much though. I get so excited when I talk about this stuff. It makes me so mad when people say it's bullshit. I get so mad. I get so mad. Oh my god. It honestly, well, there's an element to the Irish language that would make it so easy to study medicine. I don't know if that's just the way that I'm reading it, but it's kind of like, it is a little bit kaleidoscopy, because it's like everything is everything. The repetition of the word fade in, which is like the word tube, everything sort of becomes a tube. Like, there's tubes everywhere. There's like under tubes, sub tubes, faux fade in. Language is so interesting. It is so fascinating. And it's also like binding. Like, it's just thinking about this connection of like ropes and fibers and tubes, and it's wild. And wheels, and the idea of like water wheels in Ireland is water wheels and weaving. Oh my gosh, let me get my book. Marty, cat, Marty, watch the camera. fine, bud. Oh. So I know we think about like Celtic crosses and Celtic things like that, you know? And we don't think about them as instructions. They're weaving instructions. They're literally instructions. This is like the lace. Breadin in Ireland. This is like the lace. I know, they're instructions. I was like, oh my god. Oh my god. I know. It always blows my mind. And so much of this is described. The going under. And this is making a merlog. Merlog, the thing that I most recently mentioned in my most recent video. He's making a merlog. It's a basket for catching fish, like a narrow basket for catching fish. And all the women on that page are in little baskets for catching fish. And there's 2 fish on it. It's crazy. Merlog. And breadin is one of the most common words, and it's the word for like cloth, or like homespun cloth and gossamer. And there's braiding that happens. So breadin also sounds phonetically in Irish like the word for braiding. It's so cool. The wheels, there are wheels regularly described in this process of like spinning a wheel with fabric. There's also water wheels described. So cool. It's so instructional. That's why there's a possibility that this like could be a person doing like a survey of Ireland and then bringing it back to wherever they're from. But there's such an intimate understanding of this Cisalpine Celtic or Irish language that's being used that it makes me think that they're from either Ireland or, I mean, specific Irish locations are discussed, so it just makes me think that. Oh, and this is described. Reeds in water. And they were using like reeds for fiber for rope making. Wait, what is I don't know what that is. Futhurk ruins? What is that? Hold on, let me look. Nordic ruins. Oh yeah. So there are some ruins in Ireland that we looked up as possible locations, which was super cool. I can't go into all the details there because there's some. Oh, and roofs. Roofs are mentioned as well. The building of roofs. Like literally, it's a word in Irish for hanging overhead thing, I guess. But it's literally describing this, and I kept on having that word come up, and I was like, that can't be it. That's so weird. But then when I got this book, I was like, oh. I'm gonna look up the ruins. Oh, live will end in 5 minutes. It's making me prove that I'm a human. Are you talking about the alphabet? Nordic runes? That came up in my alphabet search. Yeah. So Aham is what I've been looking at as well, which is like super old. Oh, with the knots, yeah. I think some of these alphabets are linked to Aham. Whoa, that's weird. I'm just looking through these symbols. And these look kind of, if you look up the Venetic alphabet, that's what I was using to assign characters at the very beginning. I was looking at the Lugano, Lepontic, and Venetic alphabets. But it is kind of weird because it when you start looking into this stuff, sometimes places will be so similar. And then everything sort of becomes like a fractal of itself, and it's like, oh my god, everything's everything. But this is super cool. There's the one diagram though looks like a charm. The diagram that I translated at the bottom left of the cartography map. And I'm trying to think of what, because it's a 3. It's the word for trident or fork is there. And I just sent it over to Kyra. But it's weird because these look kind of like the charm, this Nordic. But it I mean, it looks like a part of a compass, but it's not completely aligned, which is weird. So we're gonna look into it. Yay! It's not quite. I'm trying to think of what. In Irish, it looks kind of like a let me look up Aham again. Because the Aham lines are all different types of trees. Yeah, like CHKH, which is what type of tree? Elm. But it's only one direction. Oh, I'm looking at so I already have it translated. It's just the inner, there's like uh, it mentions trident, so it's basically a trident. It's on the bottom left of the main pull-out cartography map. So the bottom left corner. So I have that translated, but I'm thinking that those inner lines are aham for T's, and then as you go along the O, it switches over to a V. They're all threes. They're all like triplets. Triplets. Super bizarre. Oh, what page is it? Sorry. 85? 85, yeah, 85V. Bottom left. Right? Doesn't it look like an exquisite corpse? Oh my God. I gotta go. But I'll talk to everyone later. Bye. But I'll talk to everyone later. Bye.